Hey guys! Yay, this is so exciting. Okay, I'm so sorry initially, I'm just going to say this because we were meant to have a YouTube live today and unfortunately the YouTube stream link was just not having any of it tonight. It was just not working. I think I spent all day trying to figure out how to get another person onto the interview. So that was fun, and unfortunately tonight it was just not working. So Olivia to come onto Instagram Live instead, and that's going to be just a lot easier for tonight. So hi guys, and thank you so much for joining.
Hello.
Hello. Hello again.
Hi.
All right, so we've had a few issues with the YouTube stream tonight, but we're just going to move past it and we're just going to do Instagram instead because it's so easy.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for coming over from YouTube. If you have as well, we're going to be talking a little bit more about pitching tonight. And if you guys didn't see the last pitching video that I did with Olivia a couple of weeks ago, this will be really good for you guys to join today and to ask some questions. But we would ask that the questions that you have, if you can ask them towards the end of the video, that would be great, or towards the end, and we should be able to answer as many as possible then. So, Olivia, welcome.
Hi.
So it's so great to have you on again. And just to give you a bit of background on Olivia, guys, she is a UK fashion photographer. I'm going to get her to introduce herself though and to tell you guys a little bit more about what she does. She is super experienced with pitching. She even has a course on pitching. So that's really, really great if you guys are interested in learning more about that. But I'm going to hand it over to her and let her introduce herself a little bit more.
Hi. My name is Olivia. I'm a fashion photographer based in the UK, just outside of London. I'm originally from Switzerland, but I moved here when I was 18, so 10 years ago. And I primarily work with fashion brands, mainly in the UK, also with magazines, and I also help other photographers with the business side of photography. So I don't really do anything technical. It's all about business with me. And one of my favorite things to talk about is pitching and the value that pitching can bring to photographers, because I think that it's not really spoken about that much, that that's actually the best way to get work, is to actually just go to people you want to work with and show you what you can do to them.
Yes, absolutely. So I definitely want to go over that again because we'll probably go over a few things just to do with the importance of pitching too, because I don't think the importance of pitching is stressed enough online and in information that you see online. I think it's something that actually gets pushed a lot to the wayside. And I think when there's a lot of people out there that are trying to ask you, like, how do I earn money from fashion photography, or how do I earn money as a freelancer? Pitching has got to be the number one thing to really get your business going and to kickstart it and to get you that income that you want. So one thing, Olivia, though, I find with a lot of people that do ask me a little bit about pitching, and on my channel in particular, is that people do tend to have a bit of, I guess, self-confidence issues when it comes to pitching, and they do have that fear of rejection. They are nervous. It's not something necessarily pleasant at first to put yourself out there that much, but how do you overcome, or how did you overcome that nervous feeling, I guess, when you were pitching for the first few times, and how did you kind of get a little bit more confident?
I think for me, because I kind of stumbled on it by accident. So I essentially had been given an email address to a brand's marketing team that I really liked, and on a complete whim just sent them an email saying I love what you do. I would love to shoot this idea I've had for you. If you send me some clothes, I'll send you some pictures. And I didn't, and that was kind of like a model that influencers used. So I was sort of copying that idea. And the company got back to me really quickly, and they were like, yes, we'd love to work with you and do this. So I got given the clothes in exchange for the images, which for me was as someone who'd never worked with a brand before, that was amazing. So I think if you get success quickly, and most people who I teach do, they'll get some kind of reply very quickly, that's really motivating. So that can really help overcoming that fear, because once you know that it works, you just want to keep doing it more and more to see how much further you can take it. And then the other thing to know is that it's an industry standard. People expect photographers and anyone who's creative to reach out to people they want to work with and ask them if they either want to collaborate with them or work with them in some way. So it's a completely normal thing to do. And then understanding that when it comes to like putting yourself out there, a lot of us like to stay in our comfort zones because it's quite comfortable. And I learned really recently some like actual psychology about the brain and how it works. And essentially what happens is when you start doing something that's scary, your brain can't really distinguish between something that is literally gonna kill you, like a tiger running at you, and something that you think is just a bit scary, like pitching to someone. And the only way to overcome the fear is to actually do the thing and prove to your brain that you don't die when you do something that's a bit scary. So like, it sounds so painful to say, but the only way to get confident and comfortable with it is to actually do it and try. And that doesn't mean like starting with, if you want to like work for Chanel one day, not going straight to Chanel. Like you can work your way up and just start with smaller brands, small businesses that you want to reach out to, and build that confidence up so that eventually you can start reaching out to the big magazines, the big brands that you dream of working with.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize as well. That will go for everything, like in terms of building your confidence up about your work, about photography and getting out there and making contacts. Like it's really to do with everything. The more you put yourself out there, the more you do it, the more confident you do become with it, and it becomes second nature. Like to me, I remember like pitching, well, not necessarily pitching, but emailing a modeling agency for the first time was terrifying for me. Like I didn't want to do it. I was really, really scared to do it. But in the end, I did it because I thought, well, this is just going to be one little thing to move me along with my career at the moment. And after I did it, I never looked back. Like emailing modeling agencies these days is just so normal.
Yeah, and that is pitching. Like emailing a model agency is the same thing. It's no different. It's just that you're speaking to a different kind of person, whereas when you're pitching to a brand, it's a brand and model agency. Or it's like you could say the same thing about reaching out to a makeup artist that you want to collaborate with, or a stylist. It's all just outreach. It's all just emailing someone and asking them if they want to work with you. And I think that sometimes the word pitching scares people so much because they're like, oh, that sounds really serious. That sounds like terrifying.
Like intimidating,
When actually all you're doing is emailing someone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think like too, I really like if I asked you the question, like, do you think you could really have a very successful fashion photography business without pitching? Like when you think of the span of maybe having a career from, you know, from your 20s or your 30s right up until, you know, without doing any sort of pitching, I find that really hard to see like being a reality. And having a very lucrative business that way without doing any pitching, I think that would be very hard.
So like I think it's probably impossible to build a career as a fashion photographer, a successful one, and do no outreach, because in order to progress, you need to be sending your work to magazines, you need to be reaching out to magazines, you need to be reaching out to people you want to work with. And if you sit back and wait for everyone to come to you and just sort of put work on Instagram and wait, you're probably going to be waiting forever.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's maybe where my turning point was with pitching too, because I was pretty much just waiting for the work to come to me. I was kind of like, oh, I'm just going to be a great fashion photographer, you know, like all these brands are going to be lining up and wanting to contact me. And it just doesn't work that way, unfortunately. It doesn't.
And I wish it did, but it doesn't.
Oh my God, me too. It would make life so much easier. But unfortunately, it's just not one of those things that I've found has really happened. I found the only time that sort of tends to happen is when I'm putting my work out there in other ways, like when I'm really working hard at pushing my work on social media or YouTube or wherever it might be. That's when I start to get a bit more interest that way, necessarily without pitching. But I think pitching is that solid thing that you always need to be doing, especially in a year like this with coronavirus. I think pitching is very, very important throughout that time where you might not be having people lining up for your work.
No, and because like brands, especially now, because no one's able to travel, and, you know, especially in the UK where I'm based, the weather is terrible 6 months out of the year. So they normally fly abroad to go and shoot all their collections. So brands are absolutely looking for creative solutions to the problems they're having. So a
Yeah.
lot of people I've spoken to have said, oh, you know, coronavirus, I can't reach out to brands. I'm like, no, you should, because if you have an idea of how you might be able to help them with the problem they're having right now, they might love you for it. So I think you're actually doing a disservice to both the brands and yourself by not trying.
Yes, yes, I think that's 100% true. And can we talk about now, like, especially like a few examples? And I know we did this last time, but I think for people who are new to this video or who didn't watch the last one, maybe a couple of examples of times that you've pitched and it's been successful, but also a couple of times maybe where you pitched and it hasn't been successful.
Yeah. I mean, I'll start with the first time where it's like not been successful, and I've been not successful a million times. I'll preface it by saying you're going to be more unsuccessful than you will be successful, because it's just the way it is. Like, for everyone, you'll get more no's than you will get yeses. And I would say that if you're not getting any no's, you're probably not trying hard enough. Like, it sounds really harsh, but it's true. I did an editorial back in August that I love, and I must have sent it to like 50 magazines, and they all just said no. And that's not necessarily because the images aren't good or because, you know, the magazines don't like my work. It could be a million reasons. Those might be some of the reasons, but they will most likely be also that the magazines already had everything that they needed already for those upcoming issues. They had something similar that they'd already included in a previous or upcoming issue. Someone missed the emails. Like, there's a million reasons as to why those images didn't get picked up. So that's an example of it going wrong. But then, you know, in all terms of it working out really well, last summer I discovered a brand really completely by chance on Instagram through an ad, and I went on their profile mainly because I liked the dresses and I was like, I would wear that.
Well, that's good. You know, kind of like what your brand is or what your interests are, and it makes you even more excited to potentially photograph these particular brands.
Yeah, and I saw that this brand had rebranded recently, so it was quite an old English company that had been around for a long time, and they'd recently completely rebranded, and they had a very small Instagram account. So I was like, I really like their stuff. I wonder if maybe I should reach out to them. So I went looking on like LinkedIn. I went on their website. I could not find a contact detail anywhere. So I actually DM'd them on Instagram, and because they had like 3,000 followers, the message got picked up really quickly. And I just said, I'd love to speak to someone on your marketing team. Who can I email? They gave me an email. I emailed the person and said, I'm doing a shoot, which was my own shoot, and I was looking for clothes to use for it. And I said, do you want to send me like a few samples to use? They said yes, and they sent me a massive box of loads of clothes that I used in my shoot. I sent them the images after the shoot, and they loved them so much they hired me for their autumn-winter campaign. So amazing. That was one example of it working out really well. I've got loads of others where I've emailed. Like, the first time I ever emailed, they were the ones that said yes and sent me a big bucket of clothes. That led to me shooting for them for over a year. Other times also, like, where another brand that I emailed, that led to a phone call with them where they were like interested to hear more about me and what my work was. I shot some free images for them like once it spent about an hour or two shooting something really simple for them. Sent them the images, said you're welcome to use them on Instagram. And then within about 2 weeks, they'd emailed me again, and they ended up hiring me consecutively for months and months and months. So, and I'm still in touch with them now, and I still work with them now. So that's a bunch of examples where just by sending an email completely on a whim with, I love what you do, would I be able to help you in some way? That led to me getting paid work with amazing brands.
Yeah, that's so great. And actually, one thing that I realized that we didn't really go over last time as much was kind of like a lead-in to pitching. So would you say kind of like a few different lead-ins that you could kind of do with liking the brand's Instagram, or like following the Instagrams of the brands that you really want to shoot for, or even, like you were saying, using potentially some of the items in a shoot, in a free shoot, in a test shoot, and then sort of pitching them those images and saying, hey, this is what I can do, and with your image, like with your stuff, would you be interested in setting up a shoot or something along those lines?
Yeah, so exactly. Like before you reach out to anyone, it's really important that you have a portfolio that's somewhat in line with what they do, because
Yeah.
people need to see actual physical evidence that you can do something for them that you say you can. They're not going to be able to imagine in their head that you can do it. So that's where, you know, doing a shoot that is sort of similar to what you think they would want for themselves, using some kind of piece that they already have on their collection. So one of the things I was doing when I was just getting started was, if I knew I wanted to work with a brand, but I couldn't afford like to buy a coat or something to use that I was going to keep and then use in a shoot, I would buy like a hat or a scarf, something more affordable, use that in my photo shoots, and then tag the brand and then send them the images as a kind of way of saying, here's some of the images I've done with your product. I'd love to speak to you about working with you. And that can be a really, really good way of getting in with a brand, or having a reason to email them. I think a lot of us feel like we need a reason to email someone. And I've worked with influencers as well. So sometimes if I work with an influencer and they are wearing like a brand that I really love and the images have turned out well, I will go through and email every single brand featured in that shoot and say, here are some images I did with so and so. Feel free to use them on Instagram. We love the brand. And then, you know, you've built that connection and you've given them something, and they're more inclined to then chat with you.
Great. Yeah, no, that's perfect. I think that's really good for maybe people who haven't pitched before and it's very new to them. And that could be kind of a lead in for them. That can sort of give them a little bit more confidence. But like you said before, I think there's just so many reasons why you could potentially be rejected as well that people don't think about. I think the worst thought for people is that, oh, they don't like my work, or they don't think I'm ready. They just don't like my photography. But I think a lot of the time that's probably like 1% of the people that you'd be pitching to that maybe something like that crosses their mind, because like you were saying, there's just so many other things that can go kind of like, it's just timing. It's really down to timing. They might already have a photographer lined up at that time of year for a shoot, or they might have someone that's in-house, or, you know, there's just so many different things as to why maybe you don't get successful on that first go, or any of the times you do pitch to clients. But
and I think it's important to remember that like most people are really nice, and they're not going to be mean to you if you send them an email with literally just a polite inquiry saying, here's my portfolio, I would love to work with you. They're not going to come back at you and say like, oh, why are you emailing me, go away, your work is crap. Like, that doesn't happen. People are really nice. People are really friendly, and if they don't want to work with you, they're either not going to reply to you, so you will never hear anything. I think that's what we all fear the most, is getting negative feedback. Or if they do reply and they don't want to work with you, generally it's just an email that says, thank you very much for emailing. We don't need anyone at the moment. We've already got that covered. Your work is great. We'll keep it on file. Like, it'll be those kinds of responses. And then you can make note of that and then try again in 6 months, 2 years time, and see if they might, maybe your portfolio is more in line with what they're doing. Maybe you've progressed. Maybe they've had a change. Maybe their photographer now isn't working anymore for them. There's a million things that can change. So it's not just because you hear no once doesn't mean you should never reach out again.
Totally. And I think for a lot of people, they might not necessarily hear a no. It might be something along the lines of like what you just said, like, oh, we aren't in the position at the moment, but we'll keep your work on file. Don't take that as a rejection. Take that as an opportunity in 6 months' time to email them again and be like, you know, just wondering if you did need a photographer at this stage or not. So I think that that's a really, really good way of doing it.
Even just a portfolio update, like not necessarily saying, do you need a photographer? It's more like, hey, I was in touch a couple of months ago. Just wanted to send you a really quick portfolio update with some of my new work. Let me know if I can help with anything. Like, that can literally be all it is.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think as well, we should be talking about your course too, because there's going to be so much information within this course. I know I talk about your course like all the time, but I'm a huge believer in it. And there's really not much out there like it from what I've seen personally. And I think as a creative, as a freelancer, I haven't seen a lot of courses that really do focus on pitching like yours does. And I think as well, it's nice and clear. The information's very, you know, concise. It's just easy to read and easy for creatives and freelancers to really get on board with. So I really want you to chat to us a little bit more about your course and what's happening with that at the moment and where people can join up.
Yeah, so I mean, I have an online course which is study at your own pace. Anyone can join, anyone can take it. You have lifetime access if you do join it. So there's no, like, you have to finish it within 6 weeks or 6 months. You can literally just go through it at your own pace. It's mainly written. There are a couple of videos in there as well, mainly like walkthroughs on things like how to use LinkedIn, or I show examples of, I've got a video on like a start to finish pitch where I literally go and find the contact of the person and then finish with sending the actual email. And then what else I need to say about it? You can literally join anytime. So the doors are now open pretty much permanently. The price is about £450, I think, but I have got a 20% discount code for people here today, which is it's Kaylee20 in all capitals, which will give you 20% off.
Right.
We were supposed to be doing this on YouTube, and there was going to be like a link you could click and then thing you could go and get that with, but we'll add it.
Well, I'm just thinking maybe, because I've just seen someone's asked in the comments if we're going to save this live to my feed on Instagram, but I'm actually thinking if I can transfer this video to YouTube somehow and sort of like tweak it a little bit, that might be the way to go, and then people can rewatch over there as well. And there's the links, and I'll have everything in the description over there too, so it's easy for people to go and join up if they want to do that too.
Yes.
Excellent. So you do talk a little bit in your course as well about LinkedIn, and this is something that we did go over last time as well, but LinkedIn is starting to become one of my favorite little methods of finding really good contacts, thanks to you. So I want you, if you can, to talk a little bit more about LinkedIn and how that was sort of related into your course too. I know you do elaborate a little bit more in the course, and how people can really try and find contacts that they need for pitching and for getting their work out there.
LinkedIn is like a gold mine. Like, it's so, I don't think people see the potential in it enough. Basically, the reason it's so good is because most major companies or anyone who's a professional has a LinkedIn account these days, and most of the time it's connected to who they work for. So for example, if you want to find out who the marketing director is of Chanel, I always use an example of Chanel, you can probably find them on LinkedIn by going on the Chanel business page and then clicking on every LinkedIn business page, every company page. They have a link where you can click and see who all the employees who list themselves on LinkedIn are. And then you can actually just trail through and look through and find the contacts or like the names of the people. It won't give you email addresses, but
yes,
the reason it's so good is you can work out, once you have someone's name, you can work out the email address, because email addresses are generally something like first name dot last name at thecompanyname.com, or like the first letter of their first name with their last name. There'll be some kind of combination like that, because it's pretty standard worldwide. And then you can literally email that person and send them images or send them your portfolio or anything like that. So that's the reason that LinkedIn is just so good.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, I've found it to be just that completely underutilized platform that I can't believe I have not been using it enough. There's really, really great ways to make contacts through there even, so I really need to get onto that more. But yeah, that's something that I'll hopefully do in the future. But yeah, as well, with your course too, I think it's really good for people to take notice of it and to really sign up if they can, because like I said, there's not really a lot out there for, I feel like, creatives in particular. And I think the good thing about the course too is that it's not necessarily just for photographers, right? It's for lots of different types of creatives.
Well, so I've written it for fashion photographers specifically. So all the content is like geared at fashion photographers, but anyone who's a photographer, basically, could take the course and it would work for them. So I have had people who are like pet photographers who want to work with pet brands. They've signed up. Portrait photographers who want to start doing more commercial portraiture. they've signed
Yep.
up because the theory is universal, and it doesn't matter if you live in the UK or the US or Australia, like no matter where you are, it works because it's just theory basically,
Yep.
and the tools are all online, so there's nothing physical that you need to go and do, so it can work for anyone.
Yeah, perfect. No, I think that's great because I think even for people maybe that are makeup artists or graphic designers and you know, other people in the creative field, this is something that's really good for them even still. And I mean, I guess there's a few things there that probably will relate to fashion photographers, but you know, I think it can translate into probably any creative field, which is really great.
It definitely can. Like I have had lots of, if anyone is interested in it and they're not a photographer, just message me personally and I'll tell you if I think it will work for you or not. I wouldn't want anyone to sign up who is unsure. So just message me if you're like interested in it and you want to know whether it'll work for you.
Perfect. I've got another question for you at the moment because I'm sure that this is probably something that is on people's minds and maybe potentially beginner freelancers. Would you say that pitching is really the key to earning a consistent income with fashion photography?
Yes. So the reason for that is that, like we said it before, most people who want to be fashion photographers, they build the website, they get the Instagram account, they do all the things that they think they're supposed to be doing, but like no one really talks about the pitching side of things. And it's so easy to just literally think that because you're posting on Instagram, you're using hashtags, you're doing stories, that you're being visible. But like there are so many people in the planet, there are so many people on Instagram, the likelihood of the person that you want to shoot for discovering you there is really unlikely. So if you're leaving your income, your jobs, everything to chance all the time, you're going to struggle. So that's why I personally use pitching all the time, because I'm constantly trying to get myself out there. The way that you get consistent income is by having consistent clients. And the only way to have consistent clients is to be marketing yourself really well and then looking after those clients when you're working with them really well. And we can talk about like, you know, customer care and making sure that your shoots are amazing, or having, you know, making the time on set really pleasant and being really organized. Like all that comes into play as well. It's not just about the marketing, but unless you have a really solid marketing strategy in place, you're going to struggle with consistency.
Yeah. And have you ever sort of pitched specifically for consistency? So I do talk a lot about e-commerce on my channel and my YouTube channel and on Instagram, and how e-commerce can really be that key to having a bit more of a consistent income. Have you ever pitched to sort of e-commerce brands or for really consistent clients for that purpose?
I haven't, but one of the clients that I worked with, I ended up working with them on a recurring basis, on like a monthly basis. I did that for 6 months, and that was great because I suddenly went from, you know, to having that consistent income each month. So it can lead to things like that, but there's no reason that just because I haven't reached out to e-commerce doesn't mean that you can't. Like so many brands need e-commerce now, especially product brands. I'm finding that because we're all in lockdown and having to sort of stay at home more brands are open to sending their product. I know of a really great photographer, Karen Rosalie. She is in LA and she does a lot of product photography for brands that sell in Sephora, for example. They just send her the product to her studio. She shoots it and then sends it back. And that is her way of making money. So you don't have to be physically there. You can be very creative about how you go about getting work. I used to live far away from London. I used to live about 5 hours from London. So brands would send me product down there to shoot as well. And that was the way that I was making money through doing that.
Oh, it's interesting you talk about that actually, because I've recently put a video on my channel about working in a smaller town as a photographer, because I also I didn't used to live in a city. I was probably about 2 hours away from the biggest city. And you know, even though 2 hours doesn't sound a lot, it really, like the area that I was living in and I am living in now, doesn't really have a huge fashion industry or anything like that. So I found that it was quite difficult to find anything really in the realm of fashion in terms of work. But this is going back to probably about 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I was just saying in this video the other day how things have changed drastically in the last 10 years in terms of how people are working. And I think especially after this year, people in small towns don't have to leave their small towns necessarily. I think there's some element of travel that's needed for a portion of the business, I guess, and when it comes to fashion photography. But I think as well, like, things have just changed so much with technology that you're pretty much able to do photo shoots in the comfort of your own home if you really wanted to.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I built most of my business up living in a small town far away from London. And I could have carried on doing that for forever if we wanted to. I just wanted to get close to a city because that was what I wanted to do. But there's no reason that you can't make it work wherever you are, because we have got the internet, we've got the postal service, like they can send you stuff wherever you are. And you can order things on Amazon and make yourself a home studio. You can work with local models. A lot of the work I was doing with brands for the first sort of 8 years of my career were just done with streetcast models I found on Instagram. They weren't agency signed. Often brands want more normal. I say normal in inverted commas because everyone's normal, but you know, they want more everyday looking people than necessarily agency models all the time. So there's so much scope, but you don't have to think that just because of where you are means you can't do what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that's still maybe a little bit of a myth that is floating around these days, that people do need to be in a city. And yeah, maybe 10 years ago, that was something that I found I needed to do. Yeah. I did need to sort of move away for a little while, and that really did benefit me in a lot of ways. But now coming back to my smaller town, I found that, wow, like I don't realistically need to leave here. I think I've made the contacts and made a lot of contacts that I need to make, and I can pitch from the comfort of my own home, which is where pitching comes into very good practice. I've got a couple more things to touch on here though as well with socials, because I know we briefly went over that before, and we've talked about how socials are great. They're a great side of things for photographers and to get your work out there and to build a bit more of an audience. But would you say for beginners especially, I mean, obviously having socials is great. Is it more important to really focus on, if you want the work, do the pitching and build your socials at the same time? And would you say that's more important than socials overall? Or, I mean, I know what your answer is going to be, but
I think it's more important to focus on pitching and going straight to the person you want to work with than spending all your time building a social media following where only 1% of your audience is going to see your content anyway. I think social media is great and I love it, and I think it is important to an extent. I don't think a follower count is important. I think that you can be successful no matter how many followers you have. I think that you need to be present on it because it's expected these days, and I think people question why you're not if you aren't. But if I was like starting from scratch right now, I would have a social media strategy, of course, but also spend a lot more time thinking about how can I reach out to people I want to work for? How can I actually get myself in a position where they're seeing what I'm doing and show that I want to work with them, and then focus on getting hired by those kinds of people. That's what I would be spending all my time doing, and is what I do spend all my time doing.
Well, this is the thing as well, because I found that from my experience, even my personal experience over the last 10 years or so, socials have been great long term. Building an audience is good long term for certain opportunities, but I've found that, you know, necessarily building socials at the beginning of your career, or when you've made that first step into being a freelancer, you've maybe quit your other jobs or whatever your situation is, if you're beginning, I've found that socials doesn't necessarily get you that work immediately, and you really need to be doing pitching. And I really wish that if I had my career over again, that maybe that's something that I should have been doing, you know, initially, and pitching and getting my work out there that way. I probably would have had a much, much larger clientele than what I did.
Possibly. Who knows? I think it's hindsight's great. Like,
it is.
If I'd known now what I know 10 years ago, 100% I would be in a different position. But it doesn't matter when you learn it. The most important thing is that once you learn it, to start implementing it and doing it.
Definitely. And that's where your course comes in, because I don't feel like when, you know, say 10 years ago, when I was really starting to get into the beginning part of my career, there was any courses out there for pitching for creatives. Like there was nothing out there
There's
for
nothing,
that.
that wasn't for me either. Like I had to
No.
just really rapidly
And
learn.
yeah, and quite often, you know, you might hear a photographer throw the word out there. You might hear them say, "Oh, well, I pitch," and then
Yeah.
it's like the
How?
information was so limited, so
Yeah.
limited online. Like there was no explanation of how to do it. So that's why I think
Yeah.
that your course is
Well, one thing I
fabulous.
wanted to mention as well is that I also have a free pitching template on my website, so that anyone who does want
Amazing.
to just get started and can't make the investment in the course for whatever reason, I've
Yeah.
got loads of blog posts on my website that are about like pitching and getting started with pitching, and then the free template which you can download no charge on my website, which will literally give you like an exact word for word of what you can send people. And there's different variations on like sentences there, and you can tweak it to your liking, but it's a good
Great.
place to start of like, what do you even say?
Yeah. Amazing. That'll be great for anyone that's beginning with pitching.
Yeah.
And I just want to go over as well a couple of the first steps for you when you're pitching. But just before I do that, I just want to let everyone know that is still watching. If you do want to ask any questions, make sure you do it in the next, say, 5 to 10 minutes, because we will be probably ending the stream quite soon. But just after we go past these first few steps of pitching, I think that'll give anyone out there that is a beginner a little bit more of an insight into where to start. So, Olivia, what would be your first couple of tips for, I guess, really starting? So before you get to the email addresses, like in terms of finding the brands that you like, what are your tips there?
Knowing who you want to shoot for, like have that dream client list, because I think that so many people don't have a clue who they even want to work for in the future. So grab a piece of paper or open a Google Doc or whatever you need to do, and just, I think, dream big. Like anyone that you've seen the collections of or the photos of that that is a brand, fashion or not, write down what they are, who they are, and keep that list, so that, because the next thing you need to be doing is building a portfolio that suits those brands. Because like I said earlier on, they need to see evidence in your portfolio that you can do something for them. They can't imagine it. So you want to be building a portfolio that looks like those kinds of brand images that will work for them. So that's before you do anything else, make that list of dream clients and then start building a portfolio that will suit those dream clients.
Yeah, perfect. I think that's one major thing that a lot of people when they're beginning don't actually do. And I think I've spoken about this before with coaching even. One of the first questions I do ask any of my students who are doing coaching, I ask them, who do you want to shoot for? What are your dream clients? And most of the time, I would say like 85% of the time, they don't know. They can actually come up with just one brand that they would just love to shoot for. And to be completely honest, I was probably the same when I was much younger. I didn't have a very good knowledge about fashion in general, and I don't necessarily think you do need to have a super good knowledge of fashion. I think there's things that you do need to be knowledgeable about, and you do need to take note of, and you do definitely need to know who you want to shoot for creatively. But I think it's very good to do your research initially when you're a beginner in the field. Like before you can even pitch to anyone, you need to know who you want to pitch to, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I think we've covered most that there is to kind of go on with pitching today. However, if there's any of you out there that are wanting to join Olivia's course, please do so, because it is so good, and you guys are going to just find so much amazing information in it to help you along with your businesses. I'm just looking at the comments now. How much does gear really matter? Is Peter McKinnon just hyped? How much does gear really matter, Olivia?
I don't think it matters that much. I mean, I've been shooting with the same camera for the last 4 years. I shoot with an film camera as well. I think that it's whatever you want it to be. Some people love the tech side of photography, and that is great. I don't really care about cameras, to be completely honest. So whatever works for you. If you're into gear and you like that side of things, I think it's completely fine to like the gear side of things. But doesn't matter.
Definitely. I think, like, I don't know, I have my moments with gear. I'm like, I don't know, like sometimes if I get to try out something new, I'm like, ooh, this is exciting. Like, but you know, am I the type of person that sits around every day of the week looking at new gear and new tech online. No. And I really, realistically, if I was breaking down the components of a camera, I could probably tell you a couple of parts of what it does. But there's
That's
just so
useless.
much to, yeah, like there's so much to cameras these days. And to me, the in-depth tech isn't going to change what I'm doing creatively. So to me, gear is not that important. And I actually made a comment in one of my recent videos where I was looking back on my older work. It's actually so embarrassing. But going back to one of my first ever photos that I took, I remember thinking, it was just after I got my first SLR camera ever. And I took the photo of myself. I was doing self-portraits.
Yeah.
And I had gone to an SLR from basically like this little tiny point and shoot. It was just like a crappy little camera. And I thought this SLR was going to make me look so good. I thought this SLR was going to just produce the most amazing photos. And I was going to be this great photographer. And I was taking the photos of myself with the SLR. And I was like, oh my God, nothing really changed. Like, this isn't going to be down to my gear. This is going to really be down to my creative vision and what I'm actually going to put into the photo. So
yeah, totally.
We've got another question here. Which is better for fashion, DSLR or mirrorless? Oh, this is a bit of a tough question actually, because I feel like this is like the transition period for everyone. Like,
well, it's funny because I was literally just saying to my boyfriend the other day that I've never shot with a mirrorless camera before. I've never tried one. I've always just used DSLR because like I said, I don't really upgrade my gear very often. I have what I have. I know how it works and I stick to it. But recently, how I started to be like, maybe I should start thinking about looking at some mirrorless and just trying, because the lighter weight kit does appeal to me. But I'm not a good person to ask because I literally have no idea.
Yeah. Well, my partner actually just got the Sony A7 III, and I've been using that quite a bit. So he does more travel-related photography.
Yeah.
And I think especially on travels, taking my Canon Mark IV was just killing me. It's so heavy compared to the mirrorless. And I used to really just not enjoy taking my camera. I would take it on trips overseas and I would leave it in my hotel room in the safe because I was just like, I literally can't take this around with me all day. It's going to break my back. But obviously with shooting fashion, it's totally fine. Like I don't have a problem with it on shoot days and things like that. And it produces amazing, quality images. But I am definitely starting to feel like the mirrorless side of things is definitely appealing to me more and more. And I am trying out a new mirrorless camera in the next couple of weeks. And I've just got that today to try. So, oh my gosh, from what I've seen, it looks very, very cool.
Exciting.
And I think the weight honestly is going to be a really big plus for someone that's going from DSLR to mirrorless, but it's really personal preference. I think if you can maybe rent a DSLR or hire one out, a mirrorless camera as well before you go and make the purchase.
Plan, I think, to just like test it out, because it would be a massive investment. Because also I was thinking the other day, I was like, oh, if I change, I'd have to swap out all my lenses. But then my boyfriend pointed out that I have my Nikon film camera, so I'd need to keep the lenses for that, and then reinvest in all the same lenses for the mirrorless system. So I'm like, oh, I just don't think I can be bothered.
Oh God, yeah, I know. I feel the same way because I've had my Canon stuff for so long, and I do love it. And there's really not much that I would change there. When I'm shooting fashion, I think it's very different to when I'm going out traveling and I'm shooting travel photos and I'm filming. It's such a different environment, and I like actually having both. I like having the option of having the mirrorless kit and then having the DSLR, because I don't feel like there's anything wrong with having a DSLR still. It's, they're amazing cameras and they're still going to produce those beautiful quality images that you want. It's just going to be about your creative goals and where you want to take that, I guess.
100%.
But I think we're going to end that there for tonight. It's been nearly an hour that we've been speaking about pitching mainly. So thank you guys so much for joining the stream. And thank you, Olivia, for coming online again. I'm so sorry to everyone who tuned in for the YouTube video and then YouTube Live was clearly not there. But I am going to try and put this video to YouTube, and hopefully if anyone does have any questions, over there, they can list them
in the comments there. I'll go and check it in a few days and like reply.
Yes, yeah, that would be amazing. So if you guys do have any questions, please leave them over on the YouTube video that I will hopefully get up with this in the next day or two. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, totally fine. Thank you so much, Olivia. Again, I really, really appreciate you coming on. And people, please go and check out Olivia's course because it's fabulous. I can't talk about it enough because there's really not enough out there in terms of pitching. So please go and check it out if you're interested. And otherwise, I will see everyone in the next stream. Hopefully it's not going to be a frozen YouTube stream.
No, hopefully not. I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.